Mindfulness is an extraordinary skill. It's a way of being that is beneficial to everyone in the world, no matter your age, your lot in life, your socioeconomic position, but benefits aside, and I'm going to look at this from two perspectives as it pertains to law enforcement. As a citizen, I can say that I want those who are protecting and serving me to be free and clear from turmoil or preoccupation. I want them to be brilliant. I want them to be able to think on their feet and be resourced. I don't want them to be preoccupied. That is not the condition that we want to see our officers in. And if, as an officer, certainly in today's environment, I wouldn't want to be preoccupied with anything going on at home or something the chief said, as I'm entering into a risky situation. And here at the Memorial Fund, we know that something that can seem an innocuous standard situation can turn really ugly really fast. So optimally, the practice of mindfulness can have you prepared to think clearly and strategically. And you can, in a snap, bring your awareness to the moment without judgment, putting you in a place where you are able to make decisions that are for the best outcome, not just for the officer or the community, but also maybe for that person that you're in confrontation with.
You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today, we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
Greetings. My name is Troy Anderson, Executive Director of Officer Safety and Wellness for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. It brings me great pleasure to introduce an innovative approach to wellness, which will be a first in our series of Lifeline podcasts. Please join me in welcoming Mary Pedo, Chief Marketing and Corporate Relations for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. Many know Mary as a longtime professional who has made a career out of building relationships with a strategic approach. But today we'll be discussing her other passion. Mary is also a vibrational energy coach, master Reiki healer, rapid resolution therapy facilitator, certified mindfulness teacher, and author of the Amazon top seller, The Family Guide to the Law of Attraction. Mary, welcome. It's so good to have you here and interesting to have this discussion. Certainly much looking forward to our talk today about this other side of you, I think that so many are unaware of.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about this stuff.
I can't wait to hear about it. So, Mary, you're certified in several health and healing modalities. What are the differences between their uses and applications?
All right. So, I think I will start with what unites them. And that is that we are all energetic beings. We're molecular structures with electromagnetic frequencies running through us. And as we're walking around in these bodies, we're not only contending with everyday stressors, but depending on what it is we're going through in life or what our profession is, we often have energetic blocks. And in terms of our energy and electromagnetic frequency being blocked, think of it as the energy in us and around us, but it's also your physical energy in your body that goes to where it needs to, so that your body's running at its most efficient. Mm-hmm. Now, with Reiki, I am manipulating the energy around and within you, and you are a passive participant. With RRT, or rapid resolution therapy, we're having a coaching conversation during which I'm actually communicating with both your conscious and subconscious mind, but we're working together. And then when it comes to mindfulness, ultimately, this is your practice. And in your practice, you are consciously controlling your thoughts, which with practice lead to both a mental and physiological change in your overall health and how you relate to the world. So as a Reiki master, I'm usually called upon to help heal something physical. There was actually an article recently in Police One magazine that demonstrates what this type of energy healing is all about. So shout out to Police One for that. But as an example, a person seeking Reiki healing came to me with a physical distress, and about 2 hours after the session, sent me a text message saying something like, "Oh my gosh, I just drove over a bridge and I enjoyed it. And I didn't even tell you this, Mary, but I have a fear of bridges." But what we were working on in that session was fixing a back problem. So it's a nice demonstration of the connectivity in what might be happening within that mind body connection. And,
Hmm.
now like in RRT, rapid resolution therapy coaching, and just to be clear, I'm not a therapist, but this is a therapy modality that is what I like to refer to as a simple life changing conversation. And it's being touted as an alternative to traditional talk therapy or psychotherapy. And what
Hmm.
happens in RRT is I'm actually doing most of the talking, and I'm mining for where there might be data blips in the way mind is processing information.
Hmm.
So this has tremendous use across the board. So whether you've got this ongoing resentment toward your spouse, or you're suffering from PTSD or a trauma from childhood, or you're just limited in your beliefs around your capacity to succeed, it almost doesn't matter what it is. This RRT process is the same. And again, there's this connectivity between mind and body. When there's a block or a preoccupation, it's like there's a kink in the hose and energy just can't get to where it needs to go. So in RRT, we're unkinking the hose.
Hmm.
And finally, like with mindfulness, we're talking about being aware of your moment to moment experience without judgment. That is it. That is all mindfulness
Hmm.
is the act of being aware of the moment to moment experience without judgment. And it sounds really simple, but it's not so simple, because with our advanced minds, which allow us to do things like build bridges, create art, and solve complex problems, all these things that humankind has been able to accomplish that any other member of the animal kingdom couldn't do, we have this beautiful advanced mind, but it's what gets us into trouble, because we bring in data that isn't real. Like we hang on to data from the past, we imagine things about the future. Whereas, let's say a zebra has the benefit of taking in data that's there. There's a lion
Sure.
nearby. That's a threat. Sympathetic nervous system kicks in, blood rushes to legs, zebra takes off. But if you ask that zebra an hour later how he felt about the lion that he escaped, he'd be very confused, because it's not there. It's not real. So his
Hmm.
parasympathetic nervous system is in action. He's thriving. He's making good decisions. His parasympathetic nervous system is making him hungry and thirsty and compelling him to play and procreate and whatever it is that he needs to do to thrive. We need that ability to only see what is right in front of us, because not only will it help us do a better job, but it will prevent mistakes, and
Hmm.
it will help us thrive in our bodies in the most fascinating way.
That's interesting. I know in the first responder and military communities, there has been a real uptick in the discussion about mindfulness and the mind body connection. And you've seen that implemented now, both in the military and the first responder communities. And that's really what we're here to talk about today is mindfulness. Would you say that all the modalities in your experience that you practice, that mindfulness is the most pertinent to law enforcement? And if so, why is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Mindfulness is an extraordinary skill. It's um, it's a way of being that is beneficial to everyone in the world, no matter your age, your lot in life, your socioeconomic position, your profession. But benefits aside, and I'm going to look at this from two perspectives as it pertains to law enforcement. As a citizen, I can say that I want those who are protecting and serving me to be free and clear from turmoil or preoccupation. I want them to be brilliant. I
Mhm.
want them to be able to think on their feet and be resourced. I don't want them to be preoccupied. And, that preoccupation could have to do with all the things law enforcement officers witness and have to immerse themselves in. But it can also have to do with what's going on at home. It can have to do with their past, their upbringing. It could have to do with their relationship with their spouse or something going on with their kids. It could be anything, but that is not the condition that we want to see our officers in. And if, as an officer, certainly in today's environment, I wouldn't want to be preoccupied with anything going on at home or something the chief said to me or some crap that I was getting flack for, as I'm entering into a risky situation. And here at the Memorial Fund, we know that something that can seem an innocuous standard situation can turn really ugly really fast. So optimally, the practice of mindfulness can have you prepared to think clearly and strategically. And you can, in a snap, bring your awareness to the moment without judgment, putting you in a place where you are able to make decisions that are for the best outcome, not just for the officer, the community, but also maybe for that person that you're in confrontation with.
So from your perspective as both a practitioner of these modalities and a real ardent supporter of law enforcement, do you see mindfulness getting the same level of exposure nationally that, let's say, physical or financial resources might be receiving?
I believe, we're well on our way. There are programs and grants out there, and I know you're very dialed into those. And, we see these concepts making their way into the law enforcement community. Troy, I know you've talked a lot about pre-incident education, what to look for, signs of distress. But I believe a lot more can be done in this area of preventative health and wellness that extends itself to better performance and less mistakes, which is good for everyone.
I think at some point, if you'd be interested, Mary, maybe later on in the show, maybe we could kind of go through a little bit of what a mindfulness exercise might look like. I think it would be certainly interesting for us to see that and for our listeners to enjoy that a little bit more. And maybe they can sort of figure out, and we can collectively figure out where mindfulness would fit into the regimen of either a law enforcement academy situation or after the academy, and how that may fit into in-service and sort of the offerings that agencies are bringing to their people as they look at that more holistic wellness approach. There's a real perception that mindfulness or meditation being sort of new age or out of the box. But I know from personal and professional experiences that this stuff really works. And for many, it can be transformative. I remember years ago, I was working with a jail diversion and trauma recovery program for OIF veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And we were really running into some veterans that were having a difficult time processing their experiences and acclimating and reintegrating back into society. And one of the approaches that we took, which I think at the time, and that was probably it was 15 years ago or so now, we were really looking at transcendental meditation, which sort of surprised me that these veterans would really wrap their mind around it. But I was trained in TM, and then we were able to get a number of scholarships for these folks to learn TM. And I really saw the changes that were made in them, the peace that they were able to sort of control their stress, regulate their anxiety to some degree. And of course, then years later, I used that same approach as follow-up when I was working with the men and women in law enforcement who had responded to, at any level, Sandy Hook, because we oversaw that approach. And as part of that follow-up, we wanted to offer as many possible modalities as we could for them. And we were able to get, I believe it was 45 or so scholarships for the people that showed up there. And it was really amazing, some of the stories that people would share with me and with others on our team of how they had come from a very dark place, and even though they were going to talk therapy, and even though they had tried perhaps even something like EMDR, it just wasn't getting them where they needed to. And this gave them that power to be able to sort of control and regulate their mind to some extent, right? To make it go quiet, to be able to find a peaceful area and really sort of recharge the battery, if you will. So I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit to that. I'm sure as I was talking to you about some of my experiences, you were thinking to yourself, wow, there is a place for that. And I think there's a lot more. And of course, I know you're not a TM practitioner, but I think it sort of dovetails very neatly into the kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. And, the other thing, and I'll talk about some of these, the research is incredible, but, when you are in this sympathetic space, sympathetic nervous system space, where you're sort of in this perpetual fight or flight, run or bite, your energy, you're gaining strength. Your energy and the blood is going to your legs so you can run, or your jaw so you can bite flesh, actually.
Mhm.
And as it's draining from those places, it's not going to where it needs to go so that you can physically thrive. There's no restoration. So it just makes a tremendous amount of sense, what you've witnessed. But there's a plethora of research on the efficacy of mindfulness. The
Mhm.
the simple behavior of focused attention positively influences the feelings, cognition, neurology, and biology of the individual's neurology. So that leads to improvements in mental health, outlook, coping. It has shown positive outcomes for symptoms of depression and anxiety, symptom relief, and improvements with coping with rheumatoid arthritis, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, IBS, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. And even in healthy populations, mindfulness practices have proven to reduce the negative effects of stress. There's improvements in working memory, ability to focus, reduced emotional reactivity,
Mm.
which I think is really important for our audience, relationship satisfaction. It reduces inflammation. And we now know it's kind of common knowledge that inflammation can lead to shortened life expectancy, heart
Mhm.
disease, cancer, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's. And I love this research study. It found that just 8 weeks of mindfulness training can lead to a rewiring of the brain and neural plasticity. And important and noteworthy for law enforcement professionals is that mindfulness has proven, the practice of mindfulness and mindfulness exercises expands our capacity for self-compassion.
Mhm.
And as self-compassion increases, depression, anxiety, and stress decrease. And it's related to well-being and building connection with others.
Hmm. So I would imagine that it's probably never too early to start mindfulness. Is it ever too late? Is it ever too late? Can anybody do this?
Anybody can do this. I mean, anybody. There's even research studies for the elderly about how a mindfulness practice helps combat the effects on the body of loneliness. There's plenty of
Mm.
studies about how loneliness affects your health. A mindfulness practice can, change that around, turn that ship. So again, doesn't matter who you are or where you are, in the middle of a health crisis or just dealing with day to day. It's just always beneficial, and it's never
Okay.
too late. Mhm.
Well, you know what? Since it's never too late and it's never too early, why don't you give our listeners an idea, if you don't mind walking us through a brief exercise, just so we can get an idea of what mindfulness might look like as a practical application?
Okay, cool. Well, I thought, we would do an exercise today. Of course, that's good for everyone. But it could make a significant impact on an officer's ability to shift mindset from attack to making connection.
Uh-huh.
And I know, Troy, that making connection is an important part of the de escalation process.
You bet.
And so this practice, everyone should love it. It's called Just Like Me. And it sounds a little kooky, but this exercise develops your compassion toward another person. So we'll be looking within to human qualities and expanding those human qualities to another person, even our enemies. And we will, of course, be focusing on the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
Okay. So, Troy, I invite you and our listeners and our producers, Anna and Chris, if you guys would like to participate, you're all welcome to do this. Is everybody ready? Let's see.
When you
Uh,
are.
All right, cool. All right. So, and just a little housekeeping note here. There will be long pauses, but rest assured, I'm still here. But the pauses are just as important as following along with my words. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. So, let's just begin by taking a moment to allow your body to settle into a comfortable position. And you may close your eyes or keep them slightly open. Allow your spine to lift and the shoulders to soften. Today, we will practice acknowledging the similarities between ourselves and others. Often we focus on differences, but realizing that even a person who seems very different from us is, in a fundamental way, just like us. And that can become the basis of real connection. This can include people we don't know very well, people with whom we're in conflict, or even people that we see as an enemy. It's possible to develop a sense of compassion and understanding by coming to feel our shared sense of experience as human beings. This practice, called Just Like Me, can help overcome that sense of difference and distrust by opening channels of compassion. So, if your eyes are closed, go ahead and keep them closed. Allow yourself to take a deep breath in and a long breath out. And as you breathe out, allow a sense of releasing any tension that you're holding in your body. Briefly scan your body, noticing sensations or emotions. Just do a gentle top to bottom scan. Good. Invite a sense of spaciousness and acceptance for whatever you are experiencing right now. Now bring to mind someone that you don't know very well or who might seem different or distant from you, or someone that you're in a minor conflict with. And as you bring this person to mind, notice if you experience any shift or sensations in your body. Holding this person in mind as if they were right in front of you, say to yourself, this person has a body and a mind just like me. This person has feelings, emotions, and thoughts just like me. This person has at some point in his or her life been sad, disappointed, angry, hurt, or confused, just like me. This person has, in his or her life, experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering, just like me. This person has experienced moments of joy, peace, happiness, just like me. This person wishes to have fulfilling relationships, just like me. This person wishes to be healthy and loved, just like me. Now take a moment to sense how you're feeling. as you hold this person in your awareness, what do you experience? And now, as you hold this person in mind, send them good wishes. May they be well. May they be happy. As we move to close this out, returning your awareness to the breath, breathing in, breathing out. Notice that you are present and you are alive and you are connected right here and right now. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Do you mind if I take just a half an hour nap or something right now? It feels very relaxing.
What did you notice? Like, you had a person in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice anything within your thoughts or opinions about that person? Did you notice any shifts?
You know, I think at a visceral level, we all know that even our enemies we have probably more in common with than we don't. But I don't know that we consciously think about that. So that was a really I think a great opportunity to come to kind of grips with that, right? To recognize that even though we might be having somebody that we have a faltered connection with or something at this point, you know, we really do have more in common than not. So
that's right.
yeah, that's it.
Anna,
I think
Chris,
it's a useful
did you
reminder.
notice anything? Sorry, Travis.
No, not at all.
I know that when I do mindfulness exercises fairly regularly, and I typically see when I'm asked to close my eyes and sit and be present, I tend to see colors, and I kind of start with the colors are more or when the actual exercise started, the colors I was seeing were more like reds and oranges with kind of a yellow kind of mix in there. And then by the end, it was more blue. So more calming and
interesting.
more blues and purples. So more calming colors instead of anxiety, red. Orange. Yeah.
Chris, did you see anything? Did you feel anything when you brought someone to mind?
I was imagining talking to them and standing with them and being with them. There were two different people that I had in mind, and I hadn't thought really about the first one in a while. And I was angry when I first thought of them because it's not somebody that I like. And after you initially told me what was my next impression of them after doing that exercise, I was like, I really still don't like them. I've known this person for probably 25 years for most of my life. I don't have any kind of relationship with them. It's not a family member. It's someone that I've just known through different various circles. But that was my first mindful exercise. And I thought it was
okay, cool.
That was very relaxing.
I do encourage you to do it again, because the general practice, as Troy was saying, is you start to sort of internalize with practice a commonality where, if you might have had a visceral reaction before, that starts to soften and you can approach the concept of the person more neutrally. And really, that's what it's about. It's not to make you like them. It's just to get to that place of neutrality.
And I think I did get there. It wasn't I was just, no, I don't like them. Let's move on. It was no, I did look at it from a sense of neutrality as opposed to me just not liking them and just accepting that.
That's excellent. Excellent. I once worked with a gentleman who worked at a bank, and he was so super stressed. He took this job out of retirement because he just loved people and he loved being around people. They really energized him. And it was a local bank, but it was only a matter of months before he just couldn't stand his job. And he realized that it was kind of damaging him. He didn't like people anymore. And, you can imagine if you're a teller at a bank that's really busy and you're handling, $60,000, $120,000 a day, And at the end of the day, if he was off by even $3, he would get written up. Plus, he had quotas of products he needed to offer, and his stress was really bad. And, people can be kind of rude. What they're waiting on a long line, they're waiting too long, they think things should be a certain way. And, they were giving him a hard time about things that really weren't up to him. And so before any more damage was done, he asked me to work with him. So we started with the Just Like Me meditation mindfulness exercise. I recorded it for him and I gave it to him to work with every day. And then, like a week later, I met up with him again. We had another session. And he was just so elated. And he was doing these exercises at home, sometimes thinking about people from work, but sometimes just people in his life that he had a little bit of adversity with. And what happens is your inner mind just gets that exercise. It gets the message where it automatically snaps to making connection and facing people or facing aggression with neutrality. So he was no longer stressed. And he said that he was, sort of better able to serve people. He made his quotas and he felt creative. And he actually felt like he really liked his job again. So, with this mindfulness exercise, you can take that clouded perspective, that stuck stress that's there even before somebody says hello to us, and we just neutralize it. And, everything worked out really nicely for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great. It seems like it's a matter of just teaching people to kind of get out of their own way and allow themselves to find a different mindset instead of just negativity.
Yeah. And the exercise does it. It just gets right in there. Yeah.
So, Mary, I think we're all familiar with the term that you have to put in 10,000 hours in order to master a task. So how would an officer apply this to his or her daily practice? And what sort of time would that officer have to commit in order to master this mindfulness approach? Or even do you need to master it? Because obviously we just saw some real results right here the 1st time we did it. So what sort of level of commitment and what does the practice look like?
Yeah. So, well, the good news is it's not at all true when it comes to mindfulness that you need to put in 10,000 hours. The more you do in terms of exercises, the more that can really become your way of being. And, the more you can just whip that skill out at a moment's notice. So think of like the Karate Kid, right? He didn't understand why he was being asked to wax on and wax off and do paint strokes up and down. But when he needed to call upon those motions in self-defense, it was right there and available to him because of his muscle memory. And that's what you can build here. So there are mindfulness meditation exercises, kind of like the one we just did. And anyone who's listening now can refer back to this and use this in a way to bring themselves back to a neutral place. Because again, we can think more clearly and have some really great productive conversations when we haven't piled in so much adversity and just kind of see things for what they are. And, that exercise was called a self-compassion and compassion toward others kind of meditation practice. But there's practices, with movement that you can do. You can do mindful walking exercises, mindful eating exercises. Like in a mindful eating exercise, you might have heard about that before if you're trying to slow yourself down, let's say to lose weight. But mindful eating, is not just going to take a bite and chew it and swallow it, but you're also mindful about the food in front of you. You're thinking about where it came from, how it grew, how did it come to land on your table? Who were all the people along the way that were involved and bringing you this meal? And these are just ways to really start to expand the moment you're experiencing into something deeper. And again, you're this ripple effect of the health and wellness you'll experience, let alone being good at your job, is phenomenal. So even if you're at your sink doing dishes, you can become really involved in watching what's going on here, what you're doing. You're wiring your brain to not look forward or backward, but rather just be here and appreciating the details and the facts of what is happening now.
I think one of the concepts that you touched upon there that will really resonate with specifically the law enforcement community is that muscle memory piece. So you'll hear a lot of officers when they talk about their training that they received in the academy, or maybe their in-service training, that they will revert back to that training when a crisis happens. So there's a reason why you train to look for cover and concealment. There's a reason why you're trained to fight through if you've been sprayed with, let's say, pepper spray, OC resin, that sort of thing. There's a reason why you're trained at the range not to bend down and pick up your magazines when you're at the range, because muscle memory will kick in and you will do that in the middle of a firefight. And, we obviously don't want officers reaching around on the ground for magazines when time is of the essence. So I think that's a really interesting concept, that muscle memory piece, that you'll sort of revert back to whatever this is that you've mastered, that you've practiced over and over. And I can see that connection in the law enforcement community. And I think a lot of officers understand that philosophy. So I'm glad that you brought that up. As we approach the conclusion of this program, I'd certainly like to thank our guest, Mary Petto, again, for joining us on this Lifeline podcast and sharing her very unique perspective with this audience. I know that this has been new for us, and Mary and I have talked about this in the past. And I know that there is a place for this modality in the vocation that so many of our listeners are doing right now. In addition, Mary, where could our listeners pick up a copy of your best-selling book, The Family Guide to the Law of Attraction? And I will share a brief personal story on that. I was able to get my hands on a copy, and I was able to get about a quarter of the way through before my youngest daughter swiped it from my desk, never to be seen again. But she loved it, and she was ranting about the book, and she said, "I can't believe you had this and didn't share it with me." I said, "Well, I haven't even gotten through it, so you'll have to tell me what it is." So I'll have to grab another copy. But talk a little bit about that book and where folks might be able to find it.
Oh yeah, sure. So, again, it's about these about us being molecular beings with electromagnetic frequencies running through us, and being able to have a clear mind and focus our intention on the outcomes we're seeking. So whether that's in the moment, shifting around a situation, or bigger picture, the success that you want to have in life, the abundance, the relationships, all of those things. It's called the law of attraction or the law of vibration. And, it's all of these things, as we talked about in the beginning, are so interconnected. And so when you combine this sort of neuroscience perspective that we've been talking about with the science of quantum physics, which is that field of potentiality up there, everything exists. But if we aren't mindful right now, and it's, we like to say it's ages 9 to 99, and it's a short book. So I'm sorry you weren't able to get through it, but I hope your daughter and her friends.
I'll have to pick up another copy, because I think she shared it with a number of her friends. And I can say that an 18-year-old can appreciate it. That's for sure, because I've not seen it again. And every time I ask for it, it hasn't found its way back yet. So, the other thing that I'd like to point our listeners to is our website, nleomf.org, and look under Officer Safety and Wellness, because there are hundreds of resources at no cost to you, where you can look specifically, let's say, at Destination Zero, and learn about some of these cutting edge programs in safety and in wellness for law enforcement members across the country. I think it's important that you go there. We certainly put a lot of time and effort into this. Our motto is really twofold in Officer Safety and Wellness, as you know, Mary, and as many of our listeners do, and that's to make it safer for those who serve, number one. And really, number two is to keep the names off those memorial walls. So anything that we can do to bring resources and training and content to the men and women who are out there doing this job every day, just like this modality that we talked about today, that is part of our approach to keeping you well. And that's super important. We know that. As always, our OSW team stands ready to assist any agencies or individuals across the nation in law enforcement. If you happen to be an administrative trainer or just an administrative and executive, my team would be happy to connect you to some of these Destination Zero award-winning programs. We have a number of technical assistance briefings on our website that you can use at roll call training, and we will always strive to bring you the greatest content to keep you well. Mary, before we go, is there anything else you want to tell the audience?
Yeah, I'd like to say this to your listeners. I hope that what you heard today has already had an impact on your perspective about the power of the mind and the power of our nervous system to create situations that are intended to be in our best interest, but can sometimes get in the way of us being successful. So I want the takeaway here to be that being mindful takes some practice, but it is within reach of everyone and can have an extraordinary impact on our officers and their families as individuals and help contribute to the safety and wellness of our communities.
I don't think anybody could say it better than that, Mary. And also, if you're listening right now and you can envision in your mind somebody who may benefit from this type of program, share this podcast with them and allow them to take that journey through that mindfulness exercise and see where it takes them. Certainly, people could find you, Mary. If anybody had any specific questions about this, where might somebody be able to contact you?
Well, they can contact me right here at the Memorial Fund, mpetto, MPETTO at nleomf.org.
Again, my name is Troy Anderson, Executive Director for Officer Safety and Wellness for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. I'd like to thank you all for joining us to learn a little bit more about the mindfulness connection within law enforcement. And please, as always, be well.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444 at nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the Precinct.